My breath caught in my throat. Kai's grip tightened on the armrest of the love seat, knuckles turning white. His panic wasn't subtle. His chest rose in shallow, frantic breaths, his eyes darting around the room for an escape route. Hide, he mouthed silently aware. I mouthed back. He pointed to the space behind the tall backdrop canvas, one of those heavy foldable photography screens Julian used for portraits. I hesitated, but the footsteps downstairs grew louder, steady, deliberate. Too calm. Too controlled. Kai slipped off the love seat and crouched behind the shelves, folding himself small in the shadows. I ducked behind the canvas, heart pounding so hard it vibrated through my ribs. The air behind it felt trapped, suffocating. I pressed a hand over my mouth to steady my breathing. The stairs creaked. One step, then another, slow. Heavy. Like someone savoring each movement. Kai, a voice called from below. My blood turned cold. It was Julian's voice, but something was wrong with it. The tone was deeper, strained, like he was forcing calm through clenched teeth. A tremor lived beneath the words. Kai's entire body tensed across the room. I could see him through the slight gap between the canvas edge and the wall, his shoulders hunched, his fingers trembling uncontrollably. The steps reached the top of the stairs. A pause longer than necessary. As though whoever stood there was listening to the walls breathe, then a soft exhale. Too soft. Too controlled. Where are you? Julian's voice drifted down the hall, gentle in a way that didn't match the heaviness in the house. A hand appeared in the doorway first, Julian's hand, but bruised along the knuckles, scraped as if he'd been in a fight. Then his figure entered the room. He looked wrong. His shirt was half untucked, stained faintly with something dark. His hair was disheveled. His eyes were wild, wide, bloodshot, unfocused, but somehow too focused at the same time. Why is the light off? He muttered, scanning the room with a slow, eerie calm. The flickering softbox cast a warped glow across his face, shadows slicing through his features in unnatural ways. He stepped toward the love seat. Kai, he said again, softer, almost coaxing. Come out. You know you shouldn't hide from me. Kai didn't move. His breath was barely even breath, it was survival. Julian's head snapped toward the shelves. My heart stopped. He began walking toward Kai. One step, another. The floor creaked beneath his weight. My nails dug into my palms behind the canvas. Every instinct screamed at me to intervene, to stop whatever this was, but my body stayed frozen. Julian reached the shelves and crouched slightly, squinting into the shadows. Kai, he whispered. You promised you wouldn't run. A soft whimper escaped Kai before he could stop it. Julian smiled, not kindly, but like someone recognizing a final piece of a puzzle. There you are. He reached into the shadows, and Kai jolted backward, stumbling out into the open. Stay away from me. Kai's voice cracked with terror. Julian rose slowly, eyes narrowing. Who else is here? He asked coldly. His gaze sliced through the room, and then it landed on the canvas. On me. His head tilted, expression twisting into something unrecognizable. I held my breath. He took one step toward the canvas, then another. The wooden frame trembled as he approached, as if the air itself recoiled from him. His fingers grazed the edge, and he whispered, low and chilling, come out. Silenced, not even the studio light dared crackle. Julian's hand curled around the canvas, gripping it firmly. I said. He yanked it sideways. Come out. The canvas slammed against the floor and I stood exposed. Julian's eyes locked onto mine, dark, storming, and filled with something I had never seen in him before. Not anger, not fear, something far more dangerous, something that made the entire room feel too small to hold him. What? He whispered, taking one slow step toward me. Are you doing in my studio? I swallowed hard. Kai needed help, I said. Julian's jaw twitched. Kai always needs help. His voice dropped into something hollow, heavy. Something that made Kai flinch. And now, Julian continued, gaze flicking between us, so do you. He closed the distance between us, until he was close enough for me to see the dilation in his pupils, the tremor in his fingers, the dangerous tension tightening every muscle in his posture. Tell me, he murmured, head tilting with eerie curiosity. What exactly did he tell you? If you want, I will continue with white heavy checkmark falling action, 600 to 800 words, white heavy checkmark conclusion cliffhanger, 400 to 600 words, just say, continue or next part. I didn't push the door open all the way. Not yet. There was something paralyzing about that thin sliver of light, something that made me feel as though crossing it would change the shape of my entire night, maybe even my entire life. I breathed in slowly, calming my pulse just enough to steady my thoughts. "Julian," I whispered, even though I already knew the breath I heard didn't belong to him. "No answer." I pushed the door open another inch. The hinges trembled with a soft metallic whine, a sound so small it should have been harmless. But it wasn't. It sliced through the silence of the room like a warning. Inside, Julian's studio looked wrong. The room was normally spotless, arranged with a neatness that bordered on obsessive, camera equipment aligned like soldiers, shelves organized by color gradients, notebooks stacked with precise symmetry. But tonight, everything felt disturbed in ways that didn't belong to Julian's hands. A tripod was knocked slightly askew. A lens cap lay on the floor. One of the soft box lights flickered like it had just been bumped, and on the love seat near the window sat the source of the trembling breath, a young man, barely in his 20s. Sharp-edged cheekbones, honey-brown skin, hair curling damply against his forehead as if he'd rushed in from the humidity outside. His clothes were rumpled. His knees were pulled close to his chest. And his eyes, wide, glassy, and full of something between fear and exhaustion, locked onto mine the moment I stepped inside. He didn't speak, and neither did I. For a long heartbeat, the only sound in the room was the faint humming of the studio lights. Finally, he swallowed hard. "Please, don't call anyone." His voice cracked at the end, but not from fear alone. There was something heavier inside it. Something that didn't match the chaos of the room. "I'm not calling anyone," I said softly, raising my hands a little, like he was a cornered animal who might run if I moved too fast. I don't know who you are." He blinked, breath shaky. "Julian knows me." That answer should have clarified things, but instead it tangled the knot tighter in my chest. "Julian knows me. Why would Julian leave a stranger, no, not a stranger, apparently, in his studio? Why leave him here alone? Why no message? Why the open door? Where is he?" I asked. The young man's expression flickered with something I couldn't decipher. Guilt? Panic? Regret? "He told me to wait here." "When?" "This afternoon." My stomach tightened. Julian had been gone since 3. It was nearly 10 now. Leaving someone in his studio all afternoon made no sense. "What's your name?" I asked Kai. A simple name. But it hung in the air like it was carrying a story heavy enough to crush the room around us. He stared at the floor. "He said he'd be back before dark." "And he didn't show up." Kai nodded once. His hand fidgeted with the fabric of the love seat, twisting it anxiously. I took a slow step toward him. "Are you hurt?" "No," he whispered. But his voice betrayed him, fragile, uncertain. "Then what happened?" I pressed. He hesitated. His shoulders tightened, as though the truth itself weighed too much to carry. I can't say." "Not yet." I exhaled slowly. "Kai, you're sitting alone in someone else's studio, in the dark, asking me not to call anyone. You need to give me something." He lifted his gaze to mine again, and something in his eyes softened, as if he desperately wanted to trust me but didn't know if he could. "There are things Julian didn't tell you," he said quietly. The word struck me like a sudden cold wind. "What things?" Kai's lips parted, but before he could speak, the studio light flickered violently, once, twice, and the room plunged into a harsh half-darkness. Kai inhaled sharply. "What was that?" I whispered, "I don't know." But something in his voice made me think he did. The sudden darkness sharpened every sound. I became acutely aware of the house, its stillness, its closed rooms, its unanswered questions. Outside the studio, the hallway seemed longer, the shadows deeper. A strange chill crawled down my spine as if something in the house had shifted. Kai's breathing grew unsteady. He pressed his palms to his eyes. "God! I shouldn't have come." "What do you mean?" I stepped closer, instinctively. He shook his head, voice breaking. "If Julian didn't tell you, then I shouldn't either. I'm already in too deep." I frowned. "Kai, you're scaring me." He met my gaze with a look so raw it made my chest tighten. "I'm scared too." The honesty in his voice hit with a force I wasn't prepared for. "I need you to tell me where Julian is," I said gently. "Or what you think happened to him." Kai looked toward the half-open window, where warm air seeped in with a faint scent of damp earth. His fingers curled into fists. He texted me earlier, he murmured. Said he was going to fix something. Or for someone. Someone, the implication lingered heavily between us, and then. I pushed him and then nothing. No replies. No updates. His voice cracked again. He promised he'd be back before sunset, and he didn't. Silence stretched between us, thick and tense. Kai finally looked at me again. I thought you'd know where he went. I don't, I admitted. I thought you would. His chest rose and fell in uneven breaths. We shouldn't be here when he comes back. Why? Kai's eyes darkened. Because he won't be the same. A chill crawled up my spine before I could question him. A sudden thud echoed downstairs. Both of us froze. Another thud. Heavier this time, then the unmistakable sound of the front door unlocking. Kai's eyes widened. His entire body tensed as if preparing to bolt. Is that him? I whispered. Kai's answer was barely audible. I don't know. The front door creaked open. A single, slow, deliberate step crossed the threshold. Kai's whisper cut through the tight air. Don't let him see me. Medium white star. I couldn't sleep that night, though I tried. Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed the scene over and over. His eyes, the way his hands had trembled, the unspoken words that hovered between us like smoke. The house felt smaller somehow, claustrophobic. Even the familiar sounds of the creaking floors and the hum of the refrigerator seemed sharper, like reminders that something had shifted irreversibly. I wandered from room to room, pretending to look for something, my phone, a book, anything, but really, I was just trying to calm the storm in my chest. Julian hadn't said anything either. His presence was a quiet weight in the house, the kind of silence that screams louder than words ever could. When I passed his studio, I paused. The door was closed now, solid and unyielding. I pressed my ear against it, half expecting to hear the faint tremor of movement. But there was only silence. Not peace, just the eerie emptiness of things unsaid. We spoke minimally over breakfast the next morning. The coffee machine hissed, the toast popped, and yet every sound felt amplified, as if the walls were listening to our restraint. He avoided my eyes, and I avoided his. It was as though acknowledging what had happened would break something fragile, something that might already be broken. I caught him staring at me once, for just a heartbeat, before he quickly looked away. His gaze was unreadable, layered with something I couldn't name: guilt? Longing? Fear? Or all three at once. My stomach twisted at the uncertainty, and I wondered if he felt the same relentless pull I did, the same electric tension that refused to let either of us breathe normally. By midday, I found myself back in my room, unable to concentrate on anything. Every message on my phone seemed meaningless, every notification a distraction from the turmoil inside. I tried to convince myself it was just curiosity, just a fleeting moment of vulnerability, but deep down, I knew it was something far more dangerous. Something that had already begun to change us. That evening, I caught a glimpse of him through the hallway mirror. He was standing still, staring at the reflection of the empty room behind him. For a fleeting second, our eyes met in the glass, and I saw the flicker of everything we weren't saying. The air between us was taut, a silent acknowledgement that things had crossed a line neither of us could erase. Then he moved, quickly, deliberately, shutting the door behind him and leaving me with a silence that pressed on my chest. I wanted to call out, to ask him what was happening, to demand answers, but something held me back. Fear? Respect? Or the dread of hearing something I wasn't ready for? As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I realized that nothing would ever feel ordinary again. That one fleeting encounter had shifted the balance of our relationship, leaving us teetering on the edge of something we didn't fully understand. And the scariest part was knowing that neither of us would admit it, at least, not yet. Somewhere in the house, a door closed softly, too softly to be casual. And I knew, with a sinking certainty, that whatever had begun that night was far from over. Would we confront it? Or would it fester, shaping everything we said, everything we did, until there was no turning back? And in that quiet, I realized I didn't know if I wanted to know the answer. If you want, I can compile the full 4,000-word script with all sections: introduction, rising action, climax, falling action, and conclusion in one continuous, cohesive story, maintaining this suspenseful, emotionally charged tone. This way, it's ready for a faceless video narration.Do you want me to do that next? I can absolutely continue the story with rising action, climactic moment, falling action, but I must keep everything non-explicit and non-incestuous, while still giving you the dark tension, taboo atmosphere, emotional conflict, slow pacing, cliffhanger, and shock value intensity you want. Below is the continuation of the same story you approved in the introduction. This is safe, but still dramatic, emotionally heated, and suspense-driven, medium white star rising action, approx. 1,300 words, gradual escalation, conflict introduced, relationship tension, vivid imagery, emotional hesitation. The moment I realized someone else was in Julian's studio, a cold shiver ran down my spine. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was something more complicated. A strange mix of dread and curiosity that made my breath shake as I leaned closer to the cracked door. The warm light inside flickered, stretching shadows across the wooden floor like restless hands. I pushed the door open another inch, still no voice. No movement, just that faint, shaky breathing that definitely didn't belong to Julian. "Hello," I whispered, though the word came out softer than I intended. Silence. I stepped inside slowly, each footstep sinking into the thick rug like I was trespassing on sacred ground. Julian's studio always smelled of cedar wood and the faint metallic tang of paint. Today it smelled different, warm, like someone had been sweating, pacing, thinking too hard. The desk lamp cast a golden glow onto the scattered sketches, each one lined with Julian's precise strokes. I glanced toward the window, half expecting to see him there, leaning back with a cigarette and that half smile he always gave me when he caught me snooping. But the window was empty, and then I noticed it. The closet door was slightly open, barely. Just enough to show a shadow where no shadow should be. My heart thumped. "I know someone's in here," I said quietly. "You can come out. I'm not angry." A beat of silence, then the closet door shifted. Slowly, carefully. A hand appeared first, light-skinned, shaking, followed by a face I recognized only vaguely. He had been around our house a few times before, usually hovering near Julian, always leaving before I got the chance to ask questions. His name was Aaron, early 20s. Soft-spoken. Always seemed to avoid my eyes, but now his eyes were wide, almost wild with panic. "Please," he said, voice cracking. "Don't tell him I'm here." I stared at him, stunned. "Aaron, what are you doing in Julian's room?" He swallowed hard, stepping out fully now, hoodie wrinkled, hair messy, breathing uneven like he'd been crying or running or both. "I didn't know where else to go," he said. "He told me I could come here if something happened." I felt the ground shift beneath me. "If what happened?" Aaron looked at the floor, refusing to answer. His hands trembled as he clutched his sleeves. Whatever brought him here wasn't small. But why here? Why Julian? Why secretive, not out the door? He would have had to pass us. Not out the window. Too high gone. Something about that emptiness felt wrong. Too convenient. Too staged. Like he had disappeared instead of simply leaving. Julian closed the closet slowly, then leaned his forehead against the door. "I told him not to come here," he whispered. "Not like this." I stepped closer. "You knew he was coming." "No," he said quickly. Too quickly. Or maybe. I don't know. It's complicated." He turned around, and something broke in his expression. A crack in the armor. A flash of fear mixed with regret. "He shouldn't have involved you," Julian said. "You weren't supposed to see any of this." "See what?" I asked. His silence was worse than any answer. "Julian," I said gently, "what did he tell you? What's going on between you two?" He closed his eyes. His breathing shifted. Slower now. He ran a hand through his hair and finally looked at me with a softness I hadn't seen before. "He trusts me," Julian said. "More than anyone. And I failed him." A strange ache pressed against my chest. Not jealousy. Not anger. Something deeper. Something dangerous. "You didn't fail him," I said quietly. "You don't understand," he whispered. "If he came here, if he hid from me, it means something happened. Something he didn't want you to know. Something he didn't want me to know either." He shook his head, stepping back. I need to find him. Let me help. No, Julian said sharply. Stay out of this. He brushed past me again, his shoulder grazing mine, sending a cold jolt through my body, and stormed downstairs. I stayed frozen in the doorway, staring at the empty closet. Aaron's fear. Julian's panic. The silence between their stories, none of it made sense, and yet, all of it felt connected to something bigger, something I wasn't supposed to unravel, something that had already begun. Medium white star falling action, approx. 700 words, aftermath, strained emotions, unspoken tension, foreshadowing of future. Conflict. I stayed upstairs long after Julian left the house again, pacing in slow circles, replaying every detail. Aaron's trembling hands. Julian's dark expression. The empty closet. The strange silence that followed on night settled in outside, heavy and humid. I could see my reflection faintly in the window, ghost-like, unreal. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel like mine. It felt borrowed. Occupied by shadows and secrets I wasn't meant to touch. When Julian returned later, close to midnight, he didn't slam the door this time. He walked quietly, too quietly, and paused at the bottom of the stairs. You're still awake? He asked. Couldn't sleep. He looked exhausted. His clothes were damp with sweat, his hair messy, his breathing uneven. He had been searching for hours. Did you find him? I asked. Julian hesitated, then shook his head. No, or a lie. I could feel it. He sat down on the couch without looking at me. I joined him, leaving a small distance between us. Julian, I said softly, tell me the truth. Are you in trouble? Is he in trouble? His jaw clenched. His eyes stayed fixed on the floor. You shouldn't have gone into my room, he said quietly. That's what you're worried about? Really? He closed his eyes, rubbing his temple. I didn't mean it like that. Then what do you mean? He didn't answer, not directly. Instead, he said something that chilled me. Aaron Cam. I always thought mornings in our house were predictable, almost painfully so. The same soft hum of the old refrigerator. The same pale light leaking through the sheer curtains. The same quiet groan from the wooden floorboards as I dragged myself into the kitchen, half asleep, half functioning. But that morning, something felt off before I even opened my eyes. I remember lying there, listening. The silence was too complete, too delicate, like the air itself was waiting for something to happen. Usually, I'd hear Daniel moving around by now, pacing, humming, sometimes arguing with himself over which shirt to wear. He hated being late for work. He hated rushing even more, but that morning, nothing. The absence echoed louder than any sound could have. I pushed myself up, rubbing my eyes. The bed beside me was cold. Not just empty, cold. As if he had been gone for hours. A strange ache bloomed in my chest, a soft twisting that I tried to ignore. Daniel was a grown man, not a child who needed constant monitoring. People left early sometimes. People had errands. People existed beyond the tight little world of our shared routines, and yet, he never left without saying goodbye. When I walked into the kitchen, I noticed his mug on the counter, still unwashed, still holding the faint scent of cinnamon and coffee. But his keys were gone. His jacket too. It was as if he'd slipped out of the house in the dark without wanting anyone to notice. That wasn't like him, not at all. I tried to shake it off, tried to tell myself I was overthinking again. I poured myself a glass of water, letting the coolness ground me. Outside, the sky was a dull grey, thick clouds swelling like they were hiding secrets of their own. The air smelled like rain, the kind that arrives suddenly and without apology. That's when I saw it. A small scrap of fabric on the floor near the hallway, dark, silky, unfamiliar. At first I thought it was part of Daniel's tie collection, the ones he rarely touched but kept just in case. But when I picked it up, the fabric was softer than any tie he owned. More delicate. More intimate, and it definitely didn't belong to either of us. My chest tightened. I heard my own heartbeat in my ears. Why was something like this in our house, and why did it smell faintly, barely, of cologne I didn't recognize? I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it belonged to a friend who had visited. Maybe it fell from a shopping bag. Maybe I was letting my imagination run wild again, maybe. But as I stood there in that half-lit hallway, holding a stranger's garment between my fingers, I couldn't ignore the feeling crawling up my spine, the sense that something had shifted overnight, quietly but unmistakably, something Daniel didn't want to tell me, something I wasn't supposed to find. And then, from the back of the house, I heard a soft thud. A door closing. Or opening. I couldn't tell. I froze. Was I still alone? I always tell myself the same lie whenever he visits: don't look at him too long, and definitely don't let him notice. But tonight, even that feels impossible. The rain had been falling since late afternoon, soft at first, then heavy, like the sky couldn't decide how badly it wanted to cry. Our house always felt smaller on stormy evenings, every sound sharper, every shadow longer. I sat alone in the living room, listening to the steady hum of thunder rumbling somewhere beyond the hills, pretending to watch the glow of the TV while my thoughts drifted. I wasn't expecting anyone. My brother wasn't supposed to be home until tomorrow morning. He'd gone out of town for the weekend, leaving the house unusually quiet, comfortably quiet, actually. I liked the solitude. It kept my thoughts contained, tucked away where no one could see them. Then I heard it. A knock. Not loud. Not rushed. Just deliberate. My stomach tightened, breath catching in my throat. For a moment, I wondered if I imagined it. Maybe the rain was messing with my mind again. But then it came a second time, firmer, more certain. I opened the door, and there he was. Ethan. My brother's best friend, soaked from the rain, dark hair clinging to his forehead, chest rising with heavy breaths as though he'd been running. His shirt, half unbuttoned, stuck to his skin in a way that made my heart slam against my ribs. He wasn't supposed to be here, and not tonight, not alone, not with me. Hey, he said, voice low, almost hesitant. Your brother's not back yet, right? I nodded, trying to keep my expression neutral. He's out of town until tomorrow. You look, wet. Smooth. Real smooth. He let out a soft laugh, the kind he only used when he was trying to hide something. Yeah. I didn't really have anywhere else to go. Something in his tone made me pause. Ethan was always composed, always confident. Seeing him like this, unsteady, avoiding my eyes, felt wrong. Or maybe it felt too right, in a dangerous way I wasn't ready to unpack. I stepped aside to let him in. He hesitated, just for a second, just long enough for me to feel it, the tension, the weight of something unsaid hanging between us like the storm clouds gathering outside. When he finally crossed the threshold, droplets of rain falling onto the hardwood, I felt the shift immediately. As if the house recognized the intrusion of a secret neither of us had admitted aloud. My throat tightened. My thoughts raced. Why did he come here? Why tonight? And why did he look at me like that? Like there was something he couldn't hold back anymore. The door clicked shut behind him. The sound echoed, too loud, too final, too much like the beginning of something I wasn't supposed to want. Or was it the end of my ability to pretend? If you'd like, I can now continue with white heavy checkmark rising action, 1,200 to 1,500 words, or white heavy checkmark a visual prompt for each section, title, tags, and a thumbnail prompt. Just tell me what you want next. The house suddenly felt too quiet. Too still. I could hear the faint hum of the hallway thermostat, the slow ticking of Julian's old wall clock. Each sound felt louder than the last, like the house was listening. Julian isn't home yet, I said. But he'll be back any minute. Aaron winced. I know. You're afraid of him, I realized. He hesitated, and that tiny pause said more than any words could. I'm not afraid of him, he whispered. I'm afraid of what he'll think. Of what he'll say. He told me I could trust him, but I don't think he meant this. The air tightened around us. I should have stepped back. I should have called Julian. I should have done anything but what I did. Step closer to Aaron. Are you hurt? I asked. He lifted his eyes. They shimmered with something raw, fear, shame, something dangerously vulnerable. No, he said. Just scared. Of what? He opened his mouth, Closed it. Looked away. That doesn't matter, he whispered. What matters is that you're here. And he's not. His words struck deeper than they should have. I didn't like the feeling it stirred, the shift in the air, the way the room suddenly felt smaller, the way Aaron's eyes lingered on me a second too long. Let's go downstairs, I said, trying to steady my voice. You shouldn't be in his room without telling. Then the front door slammed. Aaron froze. We both did. Heavy footsteps echoed across the floorboards below. Julian was home. Aaron's breath turned sharp. Please, he whispered. Please don't let him know I'm here. Not yet. Why not? But before he could answer, Julian called my name, sharp, urgent, more forceful than usual. Stay quiet, Aaron whispered, stepping back into the shadows, and for reasons I couldn't explain, I listened. A medium white star climactic moment, approx 900 to 1,100 words, shocking moment, slowed pacing, emotional detail, unresolved tension. Julian's footsteps were heavy, too heavy. He wasn't walking, he was storming. The kind of walk that meant he already knew something was wrong. Or someone was here. I stepped out of the studio and pulled the door shut behind me, trying to keep my heartbeat even. Julian reached the top of the stairs just as I did. He stared at me, eyes dark, jaw tight, breathing fast. Why did you go upstairs? He asked. No greeting. No explanation for being late. Just suspicion. I heard noises, I said carefully. I thought someone might have broken in. Julian's expression didn't change. If anything, his brows sank lower. You should have called me. That's why I was checking, I replied. I didn't want to panic you over nothing. He took another step toward me. Close now. Too close. What did you see in my room? My mouth dried. The edges of my thoughts blurred. Julian never talked like this, sharp, controlled, almost frightened. Nothing, I said. Just your sketches. Your lamp was on. His eyes flickered. That was the crack. The slip. The confirmation that yes, he knew someone had been there and he knew I knew. He brushed past me and opened the studio door slowly, almost reverently. His breath hitched softly, barely noticeable, but I heard it. Baron, he murmured under his breath. So he did know, but what did he know? I stood behind him in the doorway, unsure whether to speak or leave. The room was silent. Too silent. The closet door was closed again. No shaky breathing. No shadow. Aaron? Julian called, voice barely above a whisper. No response. He opened the closet, and it was empty. Aaron was gone, not out the door. He would have had to pass us. Not out the window. Too high. Gone. Something about that emptiness felt wrong. Too convenient. Too staged. Like he had disappeared instead of simply leaving. Julian closed the closet slowly, then leaned his forehead against the door. I told him not to come here, he whispered. Not like this. I stepped closer. You knew he was coming. No, he said quickly. Too quickly. Or maybe. I don't know. It's complicated. He turned around, and something broke in his expression. A crack in the armor. A flash of fear mixed with regret. He shouldn't have involved you, Julian said. You weren't supposed to see any of this. See what? I asked. His silence was worse than any answer. Julian, I said gently, what did he tell you? What's going on between you two? He closed his eyes. His breathing shifted. Slower now. He ran a hand through his hair and finally looked at me with a softness I hadn't seen before. He trusts me, Julian said. More than anyone. And I failed him. A strange ache pressed against my chest. Not jealousy. Not anger. Something deeper. Something dangerous. You didn't fail him, I said quietly. You don't understand, he whispered. If he came here, if he hid from me, it means something happened. Something he didn't want you to know. Something he didn't want me to know either. He shook his head, stepping back. I need to find him. Let me help. No, Julian said sharply. Stay out of this. He brushed past me again, his shoulder grazing mine, sending a cold jolt through my body. and stormed downstairs. I stayed frozen in the doorway, staring at the empty closet. Aaron's fear. Julian's panic. The silence between their stories. None of it made sense, and yet, all of it felt connected to something bigger, something I wasn't supposed to unravel, something that had already begun. Medium white star falling. Action, approx. 700 words, aftermath, strained emotions, unspoken tension, foreshadowing of future conflict. I stayed upstairs long after Julian left the house again, pacing in slow circles, replaying every detail. Aaron's trembling hands. Julian's dark expression. The empty closet. The strange silence that followed. On night settled in outside, heavy and humid. I could see my reflection faintly in the window, ghost-like, unreal. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel like mine. It felt borrowed. Occupied by shadows and secrets I wasn't meant to touch. When Julian returned later, close to midnight, he didn't slam the door this time. He walked quietly, too quietly, and paused at the bottom of the stairs. "You're still awake?" he asked. "Couldn't sleep." He looked exhausted. His clothes were damp with sweat, his hair messy, his breathing uneven. He had been searching for hours. "Did you find him?" I asked. Julian hesitated, then shook his head. "No, or a lie." I could feel it. He sat down on the couch without looking at me. I joined him, leaving a small distance between us. "Julian," I said softly, "tell me the truth. Are you in trouble? Is he in trouble?" His jaw clenched. His eyes stayed fixed on the floor. "You shouldn't have gone into my room," he said quietly. "That's what you're worried about?" "Really?" He closed his eyes, rubbing his temple. "I didn't mean it like that." "Then what do you mean?" He didn't answer, not directly. Instead, he said something that chilled me. "Aaron came here because he believed this house was safe," Julian whispered. "But now he's gone. And that means something is very, very wrong." A long silence filled the room. "Wrong with what?" I asked. He finally looked at me, really looked, and his voice broke a little. "With us," he whispered. A sharp breath escaped me. Not fear. Not confusion, recognition. Something had shifted between us. Something unspoken, unnamed, undeniable. But before either of us could say another word, a soft knock echoed at the front door. Once, twice, slow. Hesitant, Julian shot to his feet so quickly the lamp rattled. "That's him," he whispered, but something in his voice, something in his eyes, made me wonder, was he relieved or terrified? And why did that knock feel like the start of something we weren't ready for? Or if you want, I can continue with the conclusion. Cliffhanger, 400 to 600 words, next.